Welcome to my 265th video on my work with OO gauge. This video is by way of a follow-up to part 263, in which I built 4 PECO Wonderful Wagon kits, which came with PECO Magni-Simplex couplers. If you watch that video, particularly the latter part where I actually tried to run my kit-built wagons in a train, you'll see the problems that I had with the Magni-Simplex couplers. Great difficulty in actually getting them to stay coupled to each other when running in a train. In this video, I will be focusing just on the Magni-Simplex couplers, how and why they generally don't work properly, and exactly why I now consider them to be a thoroughly bad product that should never have been put on the market. These are the 4 wagon kits that I built. See part 263 for the full build details. As you may see, they all proclaim via red tags at top right that they come with Magni-Simplex couplers. And here are the parts for those couplers unpacked from one of the kits. Each coupler has a main coupling hook part, a shouldered screw, an L-shaped metal pin, and a thin spring. This kit included 3 springs, but 2 out of the 3 came basically mangled. Here are the instructions for fitting the couplers that were included with each kit. These couplers are also sold separately, packaged as seen here, with instructions on the back of the card. These instructions are quite a bit more detailed than those included with the kits. I bought these as new items from a retailer, and they're still sold by retailers and directly from PECO, featured on the PECO website. When sold separately, additional parts are included, each providing a base for the screw and pins to limit the pivot travel. Those parts are not necessary for the kits, as the screw base and pivot limit pins are integrated into the parts for the kit buffer beams, as seen here. The L-shaped metal pins fit into the main coupling hooks going downward. These are to provide for the magnetic uncoupling. I haven't tried this, but presumably some arrangement of magnets pulls the pins sideways, unlinking the coupling hooks. The bases for the shouldered screws do not come pre-threaded at all, so it's necessary to force screw the shouldered screws into the bases to create their own threads. This is awkward to do with such short slot-headed screws, but this is a minor inconvenience compared to all the other issues with these couplers. Here's one of the couplers from a kit assembled. The thread-like spring is hooked over the far side of the coupling hook and is supposed to push the hook back into the straight position. However, as here, it almost always fails to do so. This is basically how the spring is positioned, under the screw, with the straight leg outside the pivot limit pin and the bent end so that it will hook around the far side of the coupling hook. Again, here you can see the spring with one end outside the pin and the other end on the far side of the coupling hook. There are several things that contribute to the failure of the springs to work. The springs themselves are very weak, I'm guessing because anything stronger would defeat the intended magnetic finangling. And the couplings do not pivot at all well on the screws, basically because screw and coupling are improperly sized. When a shouldered screw is provided for pivoting something, the idea is that when the screw is fully tightened, the pivoted item still moves freely because it's sitting on the shoulder of the screw and not bound from above or below. For this to be so, the pivoted item needs to be just a little smaller than the shoulder of the screw. That is not the case at all with these couplers. If the screw is fully tightened down, the coupling hook will not pivot at all. To get the hook to pivot, you have to slacken off the screw. And even if the screw is slackened off and the shoulder lubricated, the spring will rarely succeed in pushing the coupling hook back into line. Now, I'm just going to try to demonstrate the functioning of these couplings compared to the functioning of other types of simplex couplings, the original metal couplings fitted to Hornby 00 stock, and the plastic couplings fitted to later 00 stock. Okay, what we have here are examples of the original metal simplex couplings fitted to Hornby 00 stock for a long time. You know, they don't have any kind of spring or anything, they're riveted in place, they pivot, but the travel's limited. In this case, the travel's limited by a tail at the back hitting pins, but they have limited travel. So they can swing from side to side, but only a certain distance. And that's pretty much all there is to them. Let me see if I can just zoom in a little bit here, if I can. Okay, so now if we push these two pieces of rolling stock together, they will couple. See, they're coupled. Push them together, pull them apart. They're still coupled. Push them apart, pull them. They're still coupled. So if this train is going along, it slows down, and then it speeds up again, they'll stay coupled. And that's what you want. And basically these work very well, so long as they don't get bent. And if they do get bent, you can bend them back. Okay. I want to zoom back. Well, maybe not. Let me see what we got here. So this is an example, oops, of the plastic couplings that 00 fitted to later rolling stock. Notice these also pivot. They pivot a little bit different in terms of angle and whatever, and they're made of plastic. If we can put two pieces of rolling stock here, so we push them together, pull apart, they're coupled. Oops, I haven't got that on, so I didn't have the left-hand thing on the rails properly, but okay, so there you go. See, it's coupled. Push them together, pull them apart, they're coupled. Push them together, pull them apart, they're coupled. These are pretty good as well. The problem with them is they break a bit easier, and of course if they break, it's pretty hard to fix things. Okay. Now, here are a couple of wagons built with the Magni-Simplex couplings. Now these also have limited travel. They're limited by pins here, and they're supposed to be pushed back into that position by the little spring, but mostly the little spring, see, this is pretty floppy. It's not like it's tight, but the spring just doesn't have the power to push it in place. Why does it matter? Why does it even need the spring? Well, we push them together, we pull them apart. Well, they are coupled, but then we push them apart and pull them apart again, and they come apart. This is the problem. They might stay coupled, they might not. See, I'm not touching those couplings, I'm just pushing the stock together. And this is the problem. The train slows down, it accelerates, and they come uncoupled. So they're basically useless, because they just come uncoupled all the time. Can't even get them to couple now. Now they're coupled, and so long as you pull, so long as, oh, well, famous last words, that wasn't really coupled properly, I guess. So long as the hooks are properly engaged, they'll stay fine, so long as there's constant tension on them. But the problem is, when they get pushed together, it's hard to see that, I guess, but the shape of the hooks just tends, see, I can't even get them to couple now. They're coupled, train goes along, train slows down, train pulls away, worked that time, but not this time. See, the problem is when you push the hooks together, they tend to push each other out of arrangement, out of engagement, and that's why they need a spring. But the spring doesn't work, so basically the couplings don't work. A bodge is to just tighten the screw up so they won't move. See, I've tightened the screw up on this one, so it won't move now. I'll turn the other one around. I've tightened this one as well. Famous last words. I'm trying to rail them without looking at them, which of course is a bit difficult. Okay, see, now the problem is, of course, I can't couple the stock at all by pushing it together, because they can't turn. See, they just hit each other. But if I lift one and hook it over the other, now it's engaged, and now it will stay engaged because they can't move from side to side. When you push one against the other, they can't push each other aside, unless the screws are tightened up, they do. So yes, if you screw them down, you can get them, if you tighten the screws up so much that they can't move, you can get them to work up to a point, but that's about it. I realized that where I was demonstrating the pivoting Magni-Simplex couplers, they were also tending to get out of alignment with each other vertically. This can become an issue if the screws are slackened off a lot to allow the hooks to pivot, made more critical by the fact that the hooks on these Magni-Simplex couplers are much shallower vertically than those on other types of simplex coupler. As noted, these couplers are still being sold, as seen here on PECO's own website, £4.75 for a pack of 2. Now, I just want to finish by summarising why I believe these couplers represent a thoroughly bad design. The most fundamental problem is that the shape of the coupling hooks has been changed so that they will not stay coupled together when two pieces of rolling stock move together and then apart. All other types of simplex couplings stay coupled fine when stock comes together and then is drawn apart without any need for springs. I would say that this was an inherently terrible design decision and the main root of all the problems with these couplers. Because of that design decision, there's basically no chance of the couplers keeping stock coupled together properly unless the coupling hooks are pushed back into the straight position as the stock is drawn apart, and that is what the springs, unnecessary otherwise, are supposed to do. But the springs exert so little pressure they could hardly move a gnat, so they generally don't work. The problems are exacerbated by the fact that the shouldered screws and coupling hook parts are not sized correctly to work together, so if the screws are fully tightened, the hooks won't pivot at all, and to get free pivoting, the screws need to be significantly slackened off. Even with the screws slackened off and lubricated, I've seldom been able to get these couplers to come even close to working properly. So, fundamentally bad hook design, weak springs, and improperly fitted screws. It's my opinion that this is a terrible product design that should never have been brought to market at all. That they're still being sold without prominent warnings about their shortcomings is shocking, and that PECO described them on their website, as seen here, as a superb auto coupling shows, I feel, unmitigated gall that really takes the biscuit. I would strongly suggest that you avoid any involvement with these couplers if that's convenient for you. Those are my thoughts. I will certainly be trying to avoid these couplers in future, and I may get around to replacing them with standard metal simplex couplers on my own wagons.